Laurie Strode and Carrie Tate, two characters who both originated from the classic 1978 Halloween, but ended up going down two completely different paths. How were they similar, and how were they different? In today's video, we examine how both versions of the character reacted to that fateful All Hallows Eve, and what became of the two Laurie Strodes. To best differentiate between the two Lauries from the different timelines in this video, the Laurie from Halloween, Halloween 2, Halloween H2O, and Halloween Resurrection will be referred to as Carrie Tate, and the Laurie from the 1978 original and Halloween 2018 will be referred to as Laurie. Although both are the same character from the original film, they both had two very different experiences that night. Let's start with Laurie Strode. On Halloween in 1978, Laurie was stalked by a stranger in a mask. She first noticed him watching her through a classroom window. Then she saw him hiding behind a bush as she was walking home from school. And finally, when she got home, she found him staring at her through her bedroom window. She must have thought it was a random Halloween prank because she didn't feel the need to report it to anyone. That night, as she was babysitting, she found 3 of her friends dead in the house across the street, and then she was brutally attacked by the masked man. She fought back, but the man kept on coming. She would have been killed herself had it not been for Dr. Sam Loomis, who saved Laurie by shooting the assailant 6 times, causing him to fall off the balcony. That is where the two character storylines begin to go down very different paths. In the Laurie Strode timeline, the man was quickly apprehended and determined to be an escaped mental patient who had been in a psychiatric ward since killing his sister 15 years earlier. The man, who she later would find out was Michael Myers, was put back into custody where he had been for the last 40 years. For Carrie Tate, her initial attack was just the beginning of a horrifying Halloween night. After being shot off the balcony, the man disappeared into the night, and the police did not know of his whereabouts. Carrie would be brought to the hospital where she was treated for injuries she sustained during the attack. While recuperating, she would learn that the man who attacked her was an escaped mental patient, Michael Myers, who she recognized as the boy that killed his sister many years earlier. While roaming the halls, Carrie witnessed the brutal murder of a nurse at the hands of Michael Myers, who continued his pursuit. Her dreadful night continued as she ran into several dead bodies as she narrowly escaped with her life. Later on, she would have learned that Michael Myers was actually her brother, and that the attack was not random, but instead she was targeted to be killed. The major difference in the two characters' origin stories is that Laurie was at the wrong place at the wrong time and was the victim of a random attack by a psychotic madman, while Carrie faced an extended night of carnage as a result of Michael Myers, as she was directly targeted by her brother. The way the two characters responded to that fateful Halloween night are very different. As seen in Halloween H2O, after being haunted by the ghost of that Halloween night, Laurie faked her death, changed her name to Carrie Tate, and moved to California with her son John. No concrete explanation of where Michael had been all of those years is given, but through dialogue, it is to be believed that his body was never recovered from the fire, but was most likely incinerated. What haunted Carrie is the thought that although unlikely, her brother could still be out there and could return at any time. Although she seemed to be living a fairly successful life as head of Hillcrest Academy, a prestigious private school, Carrie became dependent on alcohol and pills in order to get past her demons and block out the memories of that night in 1978. An interesting bit of dialogue delivered by her secretary Norma gives a little insight into Carrie's behavior. Norma states that "I've seen you this way before." What that might imply is that Carrie is able to hide her problems and function normally out in public for most of the year. But perhaps every Halloween, the memory of her brother's attack is brought to the forefront, and Carrie's problems are no longer contained behind closed doors. In summary, Carrie dealt with the tragedy by escaping and moving far, far away from Haddonfield, and was able to live life as a functioning alcoholic with the occasional reoccurrence of the nightmares around Halloween time. Laurie, on the other hand, dealt with her attack in a very different way. Laurie stayed close to home and was obsessed with self-preservation and turned her home into a mousetrap, training herself and her family how to fight back and protect themselves for if and when Michael returned. She could not escape the trauma of the attack and let it take over every aspect of her life to the point that it destroyed her relationships with her family. Not able to function normally, she turned to alcohol to self-medicate. Both Lauries represent a different aspect of fight or flight. Carrie fled to escape her brother and changed her identity in order to protect herself and her son. Laurie dedicated her life to self-defense and prayed that Michael Myers would escape so that she could kill him and she could finally be free. It is two very different outcomes for two women who had similar but different experiences when they were 17 years old. An interesting twist in Carrie's story is that after the events of H2O, she herself would go down the same vengeful path as Laurie did in Halloween 2018. In Halloween Resurrection, we learn that Carrie was confined to a psychiatric facility after accidentally murdering a man who she thought was her brother. She sat motionless by a window, watching and waiting. This version of Laurie also set traps, as she knew that Michael would eventually return to try and finish the job, but she would be ready. While Laurie had a comparably brief but nonetheless terrifying night as she escaped pursuit of the madman, Carrie undeniably faced a more horrifying ordeal as the assault continued throughout the night. After she survived the nightmare, she would learn of others who were killed, most notably her crush Ben Tramer. Why was Carrie able to live a more stable and functional life after the events of that night? We could only deduct that the sibling relationship between Michael and Carrie made her make the decision to leave, knowing that her brother targeted his family and he could not kill what he thought was already dead. Carrie made the decision to change her identity in order to protect herself and her son. While the fact that Laurie was the target of a random attack may have crippled her with fear that it happened before and could happen again, but this time she would be ready. Check back for more horror theories here at the Scared Stiff TV YouTube channel.